Good morning. Hope everyone is doing good today. Happy holidays. It's hard to believe that Thanksgiving has passed and we're into the Christmas and Hanukkah, rush of things and all the stuff that's going on with the holidays coming up. So, welcome. It is a beautiful day here. I'm glad you guys are having one over in Livermore. And you're right, it's hard to believe it's December. Please, as always, pop in, say hello. Let us know you're there this morning. And we're going to get ready to finish up our Star Bright quilt today by putting the borders on, and want to talk a little bit about that and an upcoming project that's coming. So if you're here this morning, good morning, Kim. Arizona, I'm sure it's nice and warm there. Good morning, Bonnie. Good to see you here. Pulled out Christmas stuff this week, and so started our little bit of decorating process and with the grandkids, so that was always fun. Hi, Jenny. And then got the other little things that's coming up and doing all that. So I'm sure you're in the middle of all of that too. So Marilyn, thanks for popping in. Sonia and Alice, got some West Coast people, some Midwest people. So hopefully in Ohio it's not too cold out there. All right, I want to get started by talking a little bit about the border. The quilt is, fairly good sized, and if you have been working on it, pop in and let us know how it's going for you, or that you're caught up, or where you're at, or whatever. And the second thing that I want to ask, because I'm really curious, I was going through a process this week of getting ready for, what's coming. And so I would like to know, what is your favorite process in the whole making of a quilt? Is it finding the pattern? Is it collecting the fabrics? Is it cutting, putting the blocks together? And just pop it in, because as I was thinking about this week, as each step went on, there was some really fun anticipation, opening the fabrics and starting that process of reading the pattern, seeing that, it's going to all come together. I know we can manage it together. But that putting those last borders on to complete the quilt, I think for me is where the excitement comes from, because all the work is behind me and now I can enjoy it. So pop in and let us know. So rainy and windy in the UK. Well, hopefully you'll have a beautiful weather for the rest of the holidays with that, but we take a little bit of that rain here with us. So, construction. Well, Barbara, I would probably say you're in the majority of that with putting it together. I'm going to drop the camera down to my table, and we're on the last page 10, and this is cutting those trapezoids for the border in this quilt. And a couple of things that you'll need to make sure that you do is, going back to on page 9 at number 26, keeping the flowers so their base is along the lower 29 and a 1/4 inch edge of the border rectangles. When you cut those rectangles, here are the numbers that you really need to circle, highlight, whatever, because you want your strips to be 29 and a 1/4 inch long. And if you keep them at 29 and a 1/4, they're going to fit very nicely into the sections of the quilt. And then you're going to have your 8.625 on the sides. And so when you keep those together like that, you're going to you know, it's going to come out exactly what you need, and your seam lines are going to meet up the whole bit on that. All right, so cutting them. When you are cutting this side, your ruler is coming at it from this direction. When you're cutting on this side, you're putting that 45-degree line, and really the long 24-inch ruler is what is going to be most important at that point. Let me grab one of them just so you can see what I'm referring to. My little bit of space under the camera makes this sometimes a little bit difficult. So here I have, so the width of this, as you can see, is 8 5/8, okay? And so you want that as the width of your border, and that 29 1/4 across across the bottom of your piece. So when you're looking for at your 45-degree angle on this side, you want that 45-degree angle, you know, your 45 at the top, and then you would, with the long ruler, cut along here. But for this one, on this side, you want that 45-degree line across the top, and you want to be, I got to get that 45 there, and you're going to cut it that way. So your this angle for the right side, this angle for the left side at your 45-degree angle. Okay, any questions on that right now? How do I get this book, please? It's not, this is not a book. This is a pattern, and I believe you can still get that from thequiltshow.com in their shop. So you might check that out for that, or Kristen might put up a link for you if it's still available. It is available. I see her. She just popped up, so you can click on that link and you would be able to find it. So if you're, you know, very accurate there, this is going to go together a whole lot better for you. And so now it's talking about attaching the trapezoids to the quilt. And this is what I kind of want to talk through. I'm going to show you here in just a minute. You're going to stitch the upper shorter flat edge, which when we're talking about the shorter flat edge, we are talking about this right here. This is the longer end of it. This is the shorter end, and this is the side that we're talking about. But it's, you really need to pay attention as you're putting the border on, that in the four corners, this is going to be open, and it's the last possible thing that you are going to sew into the quilt, is the four corners. The other thing to remember here is your trapezoid. All right, this is one trapezoid, and so the corner at the top of your trapezoid, which would be here, this corner right here, it needs to go where these two come out. So if you are laying it out, be sure to put flowers 1, 2, 3, and 4, because this is where that trapezoid top corner needs to come in. For this one, it's the right corner, this one's the left, so that when the point will cross here. All right, and then after you get this sewn, you sew down, you get this sewn, you sew down, you put this one on, sew across and sew down, and coming and putting this trapezoid on, you sew here, you sew down, and this is still open, and then you would come back and sew in that corner. And it would work best not to press until you're completely done, and then you're going to press those seams to the outside. Does that make sense to you? Hopefully it makes sense. As I'm, trying to explain it, and then just a second here, I'll show you. And this should a point should never come where, this, I guess, star point or the star points and stuff would come. So that is the end point to each of your squares. So with that, let me try to show you what I've done. So I put my first trapezoid in, and again, the short end, I started here, and for the sake of each of you on here, but what I noticed is that they fit really nicely in there. But I did put my markings on the front and the back. I sew through and remove a couple of stitches, and you can see that one stitch there that I need to trim off when I'm completely done. Sewed across here, then I came back here and sewed through again, removed those stitches, and then started sewing, and I have about 1/8 of an inch with that, and sewed across. And I lost a little bit of my point. They're not happy about that. Might work on that a little bit. But now, so I've got my first one in, and this is that corner that I'm going to have this same corner coming up that I will sew at the very end. So now I, put this one in. Let me try to get this under the camera. So now I simply sewed a little bit, or pinned a little bit on here. I'm going to repin this part of it, because here is where those two are going to come in, and you might be able to see that for the sake of camera, I put those lines in, my 1/4 inch going this way, my 1/4 inch that way, and I put the 1/4 inch line here. So it would come up to where the point was, and the point is going to hit right in there at the seam line. And what I want to show you is that if the sewing was done, the sewing and the cutting, all of that, these two should be the same length. This line and this line should meet. And when you start to sew down this side, you're going to hit right in there where those two fabrics meet up again. And so you have that really nice corner at the 1/4 inch spot, if you will. Okay, so I am going to, at this point, remove this pin on this side, just simply for the sake of me sewing this first portion of it. So again, I have my short end down here, and I am going to turn this and sew down this way. This is my other side of the quilt, and that piece will stand out there. So let's go back to my center, and again, I have my lines marked. I have my lines marked on this side. I put my pin through that where those intersect. I bring them up, and I'm going to go in where those lines intersect on that 1/4 inch. And so, again, and this line, if it's all straight, those two lines should also meet up where they come across, where that extra little bit there. So I'm going to go ahead and put my pin there for now. Just push it straight down, hold it in place, and I'm going to use a placeholder here. What I found is this green fabric really is fraying a lot, so you might want to do some fray check on that, because it keeps popping up in there. And I did the same thing here. I went into my point, my 1/4 inch there. They're lined up and ready to sew. So let's go ahead and do that. And as I've shared with you before, I sew straight through, but today I'm going to stop. And I want to talk about the machine for just a second. Most of you already have figured out that I have a Bernina 770, and I've got to get the bulk of that up so it doesn't pull on me. Alright, so I've got this under, and I'm going to put that needle, my presser foot down. Now I know that this particular machine, as it gets started, when I have my lock seam, positioned in, it's going to take one stitch back. All right. So I am going to remove my pin because otherwise I'd hit it. I am going to go one stitch, one needle length before that intersection so that it has the room to take that one stitch back, and it's not going to go over and cause a lump to form in that corner. All right, so let's, and I don't know that on camera you can see that takes that one little stitch back and then starts to go forward. And but it does on the my 770, and you can kind of see all those threads hanging out there, that this fabric is kind of shredding, and you might want to either spray it, put some fray check, whatever. So now I'm going to sew my 1/4 inch, pretty much following my 1/4 inch on my mat, as well as the side of my foot. Now as I'm coming into this area, I'm going to talk about my machine again, because I'm going to stop, because some of you I know do the marking and want to sew in that fashion. So again, when I do my scissor cut and it does that, it goes forward, backward, and then up and down to lock the seam. So that forward stitch again is going to need to be taken into account so that I don't have a locked seam past that 1/4 inch seam or that dot on there. So that's kind of what I'm going to do right here. I have pretty much, I'm going to take one more stitch, and now I'm going to stop, and it's one stitch in front of where my intersection is, right in there. And I know you can't see it on screen, and that's why I'm trying to explain it. So I'm going to go ahead and do my lock stitch, and I don't know if you saw that it went up and locked in place, or that you can even see that that it did that at that intersection or that point. So now I can go back to this side and straighten that out, and I'm going to get this side lined up. And when this is to the back side, I have about, let me get you in the screen here, and I let that slip, and so I'm going to have an issue there when I pull the pin out. So I am going to probably need to, let me get that in the, so you can see where it slipped on me. So I am going to take the time right now to go back about this far. And what I didn't do, which I had done on the other ones, is that I put a second pin in, because this happened to me once before. So I'm going to get in there, because I don't want that, because that will buckle, and then that corner spot there is not going to look very good. And I really kind of want my corners to hang in there, because I think that's what sort of makes or breaks these quilts, is that your points coming together. Pull that back. All right. I'm gonna drop a couple pins just because it has frayed so much. I really don't want to handle it more than I should be. And now that it's frayed, I'm putting my stitches at the top of the fraying as much as I am anywhere else in there, because that fraying, I have to include that in that seam allowance. All right. So now I've started that, and I'm going to get started right here, a few stitches back, so that I catch those stitches, and it's going to have a lock seam there. And I'm going to stitch kind of right up to that pin. And again, I am stopping one stitch in front of that that intersection as I'm coming into it, so that when I use my cutter, I have that one forward stitch that it takes, and now I am back to, here's my last stitch right there, and here is where my intersection is. So I didn't go past it, and that's going to be really helpful when I turn this. So now I want to bring this around. I think you might be able to see it, what I'm doing here, a little bit better. So I'm getting that folded back. I am moving that to the side. And readjusting all this. The bulk of it, I'm going to keep all that bulk out of your way. It's just helpful. All right. So again, just keeping that fraying and that movement out of my way. I have about 1/8 of an inch tip there. Here's where I'm going to be sewing on that line, and this again has frayed with my handling of it. And here's where I want to show you on this point that's really kind of nice when it all comes together. It just lays really flat as I'm putting that pin right in the intersection, and then I'm going right into that spot where it, and again you can see that those points and where I'm going to start here is right in that crook of, and so I'm going to let that pin hang there for a minute because I want to pin in front of it so that I can get right into where it comes together at the, alright, so I've got that pinned. I'll go ahead and pin this for now just so it stays in place. And then I'm going to come back up here, get that laying flat. Let's go back to the sewing machine, and again this area folds back on itself, just like they did when we were sewing the pieces together. If you need to pin it to hold it there for you, go for it. All right, so I've got this under the machine, and you can't see it, but I can. That when I put my presser foot down, my needle is right. Giving it that backward stitch so that I don't get that wrinkle or clump in the middle, and then I can start to sew. keeping all of that nice and flat. Keeping that frayed out of there. Kind of adjusting, you know, because you can certainly put more pins in. I just kind of adjust as I sew. And, you know, here's where it wants to move on you, so I'm happy for those pins to be there. I'm going to remove this one right before I get to it. And again, because of when I, one stitch before that, and as I cut it, it's going to come right up, and it's going to hit right in that, right where, let me see if there's a spot that I can show it to you. But my thread stopped right there. There's the end of my thread, and it's right where that intersection comes. Okay? And so now when you open this up, and let's go to this. So when that opens, you've got that laying nice and flat when you're ready to do the pressing. And you have, you know, at this point, this comes straight across, and you've got your 1/4 inch seam to put on. So let me see if there's any questions, that if you understood what I was doing there. Let me see. Yes, starching that skinny little strip could be helpful. Yeah, the large print fabric I really like on this border. It just really sets this off. And San Antonio, hello, welcome. All right, Jenny, I love it. I like all the process. See it come together under my hands. It is magic. I agree with you. Okay, I don't see any other questions. If you have them, you know that you can send me an email and all of that. But now there's one other thing that I need to talk with you about. Let me get the pattern back here. And that is that in the cutting directions for the Moda leaf fern, which was that light green that we have around over here, that, you know, that little one, it says that you need, you know, the 1 by 12 and the 11 by, you know, for around the border of the flowers. But then it says to cut 1 inch strips for outer border. Now, I just did it. Because when I looked at it, it made sense that there was this outer border. But you come back and you look at this. If I were to put that 1 inch border, you know, that 1 inch border around there, and then put the binding on, which if you go back to the binding is the same fabric. So you're cutting the 2.5 inch strips for your binding. And by the way, I cut my binding 2 1/4. It just gives me, it fits in there, and it's filled, and I don't have that extra fabric in there. So that's, I cut it at 2 1/4. If you haven't already cut that, you might try it sometime. So that little border and the binding would be the same fabric. And to me, that didn't make a lot of sense. So I'm just going to have those extra strips, 1 inch strips, and I'll figure out something to do with it in another quilt along the way. But I'm simply going to put the binding on, because once you sew it in, these become 1/2 inch borders around there. And I just thought it might look a little bit strange to have both that little, you know, 1/2 inch border and then another 1/2 inch for your binding on there if you're using the same. Now, if you used your own fabric, you could use that the green here and put that border in there, and then put your binding on, which you would have two very small, but I would use a different fabric for your binding than you are for that inner border. So just to let you know that I am not going to put the same fabric together, and I'm simply going to bind my quilt, and that will give me that 1/2 inch finished border that I see in the picture around it. So I don't know if that's helpful to you, if that makes some sense, and how you might finish that off. But really, now we're going to finish it, and I'll have a fun little holiday project for you for next week. And then now I don't go away yet, because I want to share with you of something that's coming up. So let me move this out of the way. In January, we're going to start, just some technique stuff, practicing, points and all of that. And there's a kit out called, it's Kona Cotton's 2025 Block of the Month. They're solids. And these are great patterns for blocks, and practicing them, and each of these blocks make a fabulous quilt all on their own. And if you make another block that would go in between, that is kind of a connector with any one of these blocks, there's some great ones out there. You could make 12 quilts simply by using this. But then the kit, if you purchase the kit, comes with 12 Kona Cotton Charm Square packs. And what's really cool about this is that if you look at the pattern itself, each one is a different color. And I want to talk about those Kona charm packs for just a minute. And this pattern is really cool, because each block comes with its own card. So you can kind of take that card, hang on to it, the ones you love and the ones you want to make again, and you have them for other projects. But the quilt will end up looking like this when we're finished. But as I was flipping through, because you have to feel and touch, and your fabric when you buy one new, it starts out with the cool colors of green, the blue greens in there, and then it goes to the yellow greens, and then it finishes up, and you have dark, medium, and light of all of those. And so you can either do your quilt as a cool quilt, a warm, using the warmer side of this, or your true, clear colors. So it has the cool colors, it has the yellow toned backgrounds, and then it has the clear or true colors in the front. So you get to choose which of these. Some blocks will tell you to pick out 16 of them, and you get repeats of everything. So there's plenty of every color in your square pack to make whichever block we're going to be working on. So you have 12 of these charm packs in some wonderful colors. I mean, just look at that. And then on this side you have some grays and browns and warm colors, and your blues on this side, and teals. So it's delicious. It's wonderful. And I'm excited to, work on some technique and work through these blocks with you starting in January. But next week I'm working on a cute little Christmas thing that shouldn't take much time to put together, but hopefully it will add to your Christmas decor and decorations, and let's do that. KK, that's a good thought on that. I just didn't I just didn't understand that part of it when I got to it, that, um, but, to have told us to cut binding strips. And so a facing certainly would be nice on this quilt. To be honest with you, I like that idea. And so, hi Rhonda. I think that is kind of a neat idea. Now my head is starting to spin on that. So thank you for that. Mary, the large print fabrics, if you have some extra fabric, there really wasn't a lot of extra for me to fussy cut it. But if you bought extra fabric or had a large print fabric like that where you could work at putting the fussy cutting in there, I think that would be pretty awesome in that. So good a suggestion there too. All right, you guys all have an absolutely wonderful week, and I will give it my best shot too. And hopefully, you can get the things done that you need to get done and want to get done. So blessings on your week, and see you next time.